here's your news for July 8th, 2020. And your headlines for today include: WWE is really planning to extract a superstar's eye at horror show at Extreme Rules 2020. Chris Jericho takes credit for WWE's Eye for an Eye match. AEW announcement coming at Fyter Fest guaranteed to send shockwaves through pro wrestling. WWE adds match to NXT Great American Bash. Updated card so far. WWE has more title belt changes on the way. Finally, a documentary on Stone Cold Steve Austin. Hugo Savinovich revealed who leaked Saudi Arabia information to him within WWE. Vince McMahon reportedly sees Matt Riddle as a young Shawn Michaels, major corporate change announced by WWE, and more. We're kicking off today with news from the horror show at Extreme Rules, as the pay-per-view could very well live up to its name with its latest match announcement. On Raw, it was confirmed that Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins will face in an Eye for an Eye match, but on WWE.com, it's being reported that the only way to win is to extract the eye of your opponent. This is probably the most grisly way a match in WWE can be won, as though we've had stipulations that have included setting your opponent on fire or incapacitating them for a 10 count, removing a sensory organ is a new one for the company. Mysterio himself has been working without a deal for a while now, and while it's unclear whether he'll leave the company or stay to help his son Dominic, either he or the Monday Night Messiah will seemingly be leaving the horror show at Extreme Rules without an eye. One person who was paying attention to WWE's announcement was Chris Jericho, who was quick to take credit for the entire match concept. Taking to Twitter, the former AEW World Champion told WWE they're welcome, and included a match card for the February 12th edition of Dynamite, which saw Jon Moxley and Santana compete in an Eye for an Eye match. Jericho wasn't the only person to notice the similarity between the two matches, as Tony Khan posted a gif from Willem Dafoe's Norman Osborn saying, "I'm something of a scientist myself," reminding fans that it was his company that first coined the idea of Eye for an Eye. Unlike AEW though, WWE's Eye for an Eye match will be won only when one superstar extracts the eyeball of another, and we're very interested to see how the company pulls this off. Speaking of AEW, the company's second night of Fyter Fest will take place tonight, and the show won't only see great matches. In a separate tweet, Tony Khan promoted that Taz and Brian Cage will be interviewed during the show, and that the Human Suplex Machine will make an announcement that will send shockwaves throughout professional wrestling. Time will tell what Taz has to say, but right now, there's plenty of announcements he could make that could shock the fans. Whilst Fyter Fest is happening, NXT will be hosting their second night of the Great American Bash, which has seen another match added to the card. On tonight's show, Johnny Gargano and Swerve Scott will face off after the pair started their feud during last week's event. Gargano's partner in crime, Candice LeRae, will also be in action, as she'll be taking on Mia Yim in a street fight, but both this show and Fyter Fest have had their issues along the way. It'll be an interesting night for both shows, as the main event of the Bash and the entirety of Fyter Fest Night 2 have reportedly been spoiled, and it'll be interesting to see which show gets the most fans tuning in this week. Now, earlier this week, the WWE revealed a brand new United States Championship design, but that reportedly isn't the only big change coming to WWE's gold. According to Belt fan Dan, who knew about the US title since December, the WWE has brand new SmackDown Tag Team titles ready, which have been apparently ready to be used since WrestleMania 35. It's interesting that there would be new SmackDown Tag titles but not Raw Tag titles, and Dan also announced a new NXT title, which will be the same design that we currently see, but bigger. There's no current reports on when the new titles will be unveiled, though with the upcoming title for title championship match at tonight's Great American Bash, the NXT Championship's redesign may be sooner than fans think. One superstar who knows all about winning titles is Stone Cold Steve Austin, and according to a report from PW Insider, the previously announced A&E documentary all about the Texas rattlesnake has started production. It's unknown just what part of Austin's life and career the documentary will focus on, but it has a December release date, and with documentaries promised for Randy Savage, Shawn Michaels, Booker T, and Roddy Piper, fans can certainly expect plenty of documentary content in the coming year. One person who may end up with the documentary herself is Natalya, as the former Divas champion celebrated a huge milestone this week. After debuting on the April 4th, 2008 edition of SmackDown, which makes her the longest tenured woman in WWE, Natalya tweeted out that she's just competed in her 1,360th match and compared herself to Cal Ripken Jr. Given that Ripken Jr. played 2,632 games over his 21 seasons of baseball, Natalya has some work to do if she wants to catch up with the Iron Man, but she's made some great tracks so far. Another accolade Natalya has under her belt is that she won the first women's match in Saudi Arabia at Crown Jewel 2019, but that show is probably best remembered for the travel delays afterwards, allegedly due to conflict between WWE and the Saudi royal family. Former commentator Hugo Savinovich was the first to claim that the superstars were held against their will, a claim that's been refuted by some of the roster, and during an interview with Wrestling Inc. said he got his information from WWE headquarters. He said, "I was informed that that was what they got. The Saudi Arabian government had stopped the flight because of the situation with Vince and people there. He delayed the signal and all of the other crap that happened. I reported it just like that, and then I heard the same thing from officials at headquarters." Since Hugo's claims were made, the story has snowballed into a class action lawsuit against WWE, and the company's attorney, Jerry McDevitt, has tried to discredit the commentator's story. Of course, that may be easier said than done, as Savinovich has said it was multiple sources within WWE that told him the story, and we'll keep you updated as this back and forth continues. Over to SmackDown now, and ever since his call-up, Matt Riddle has shown on the Blue brand, and has a pretty big fan backstage. According to Wrestling News, the King of Bros has gotten along well with everyone backstage on the Blue brand, especially Vince McMahon, who has compared him to a young Shawn Michaels. Their report reads, "Vince likes guys like Shawn who have that rebel mentality, and he sees some of Shawn in Matt. Matt can rub some people the wrong way, but he's a good guy and he will do great. I think he's a future world champion. Vince will try to tweak him, but his personality will get him far." Riddle's popularity backstage is already paying off, as he's reportedly allowed to give more input into his promos than most. On this week's SmackDown, Riddle explained that he wrestles barefoot because of the frostbite he got as a kid, which makes wearing wrestling boots hurt, and it's been reported that McMahon loved the story so much when he heard it backstage, he booked it for the show. Despite rumors of backstage heat, which Riddle himself has said he likes to play up, it seems the King of Bros is doing just fine on SmackDown, and fans can expect big things for him in the coming months. Whilst Vince is a fan of the King of Bros, two people he never seemed to see eye to eye with is FTR, who have spoken about their time in WWE. While speaking on Busted Open Radio, Dax Harwood said how the duo had wanted to use a pile driver in WWE for a while, but it was banned by Vince McMahon, and even when they asked Triple H, he said no as well. While the spike pile driver is off limits in WWE, AEW has a different policy on things, and we'll have to see how long it takes for FTR to bust out the move, which could be as soon as tonight's Fyter Fest. Speaking of AEW, Billy Gunn has done a lot in the company, but one thing he hasn't done is send out a cease and desist. Recently, it was reported by other outlets that Gunn had sent a C&D to wrestler Tony Gunn over the use of the term The Gunn Show, but according to Billy's wife Paula, that isn't true. She went on to explain that they've tried to reach out to OVW, where Tony wrestles, to ask him to stop using the term, as she and Billy paid a lot of money to trademark it and doesn't appreciate these false claims of a cease and desist being filed. Paula also noted that Tony should stop making such remarks or he could face some very real legal action against him, and it looks like they'll be the only one true Gun show from now on. Back to WWE now, and this week, the company made a major hiring, as Christina Salen has become the new Chief Financial Officer and will start in the role next month. Salen is best known for being the first CFO of Etsy, and given that the company went from a $385 million business to a $3 billion business, it's not hard to see why WWE picked her up. She has also previously worked as the CFO of Moda Operandi and Translation Enterprises, and time will tell how well she fits into WWE's boardroom. Now, if you've been watching WWE closely over the past week, you may have noticed a big change to the show's presentation. There is now a new rule in the company that ring announcers will no longer appear in the ring during match introductions, and according to Wrestling Inc., the only time this new rule won't be enforced is for title matches. However, that may not always be the case, as last Friday's Intercontinental title match between the champion AJ Styles and Drew Gulak didn't have a ring announcer in the ring, just like the other non-title matches on the show. Since the company's beginnings, there have always been ring announcers doing introductions in the squared circle, and whilst the company could always go back to how things were at the next set of tapings, nothing is for certain. Earlier this week, Booker T caused quite a stir saying that Bayley is the quintessential worker and that she's not great at anything but good at everything. Responding, Sasha Banks claimed her and the SmackDown Women's Champion are better than Harlem Heat, and now Booker has taken to his radio show to fire back. On the show, the former world champion pointed out that Harlem Heat are Hall of Famers as well as being 10-time champions, two accolades that the boss and the role model haven't achieved. Booker also added that Banks shouldn't be tweeting about him anymore, but if we know how the boss is, we very much doubt she'll follow that advice. We are focusing on Kairi Sane next, as despite recent claims of her heading back to Japan, it looks like that might not be the case. According to reports, WWE officials are expected to make another offer to get the former women's tag team champion to stay in the United States. And according to Alex McCarthy of TalkSport, the idea of Sane leaving WWE isn't a lock, despite many previously believing it was. The Kabuki Warrior returned on this week's Raw after a month away to get a DQ win over Sasha Banks, and will also appear next week as she and Asuka will be challenging the Boss and Bayley for the women's tag team titles. Following her appearance on Raw, Sane took to Twitter to say that she's back, but it's still unclear whether a new contract has been settled for the former NXT Women's Champion. And finally today we're ending with news from Becky Lynch, as the former Raw Women's Champion has spoken about her early days in WWE. Speaking to Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated, the former Raw Women's Champion spoke about the origins of the name Becky Lynch and revealed that the company originally planned on calling her Madeline. She added, "I said no to that, and the other name that came back was Robin Daly. I actually did like that, but I thought it would be better to have a part of my own name in there, so Becky Lynch it was." The man also said that the Becky part of her name comes from her real name being Rebecca Quinn, and that she'd originally come up with the name Quinn Chowlane, as Chowlane, much like Finn Balor's surname, comes from Irish mythology. Whatever you call Becky Lynch, it's impossible to not call her a success. And while she's been unable to compete right now due to her pregnancy, we're confident Lynch is looking to be called Raw Women's Champion again when she's able to return.